Jesus has set us free from that life, a life of despair and self-righteousness. But when we turn right back around and we think that we are better off being saved by the law, we need to realize that we're already set free of that. To see that to wallow in despair because of our sin and to live in self-righteousness is to undermine the very power of what Christ did on the cross. Because if we could become righteous on our own, then Christ died for nothing. So the first way that we can be set free from the despair and the self-righteousness of trying to live up to the standard of the law is to realize that Jesus died to save you from the law. And then the second way that we can be set free is to understand that we've been crucified with Christ and are in union with him. Okay, understand that you are in union with Christ. Okay, look again at verse 20. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Okay, this idea of Christ living in us, if you've been in the church more than like 4 months, you've heard this a lot, right? But I think it's something that we don't totally understand. I know as I was delving into this passage the last few weeks, I realized I didn't have as good a grasp as I should have on this unity that I have with Christ. This idea that Christ is in me. What does that really mean? But it's a really important idea if we're going to understand the freedom that we have from the law. It's a really important idea, and because here's the thing: if Jesus simply took our place on the cross, right? If we deserve death and Jesus came in and he died instead, and we get off scot-free, that's inherently unjust, right? That's inherently unjust. That would be like if I went out and I committed 8 murders. I killed 8 people, right? And I get caught and arrested and condemned to death by the electric chair. But then right before I get to the electric chair, right, Bruce comes in, okay, and he sits on the chair for me and he dies and I get off scot-free, right? What's the problem with that? Bruce died unjustly and I got off free unjustly. It's totally unjust, right? But God is perfectly just. And so how can that work? How could Jesus take our place? Well, it works because of our union with Christ. It works because of our union with Jesus, that he has become one with us, that he's living in us as Christians. And so what happens when you accept Jesus is that you become one with him in the same way that you're one with your husband or your wife. And so that your sin and Jesus' sin, of course he doesn't bring any sin, but they're combined, and then Jesus pays for the both of you as you are one. And it's inseparable, right? So let me try to explain this a little bit. So imagine there's a woman named Sally. And Sally goes to the University of Wisconsin for college, and while she's there, she incurs $40,000 worth of academic debt because college is expensive. And so she has $40,000 in debt. But also while she's there, she happens to meet this young man, John. He's a very nice man, very godly man. He happens to be handsome. And they just fall in love. They fall madly in love with each other, and they decide they're going to get married. Right? Okay, so before Sally and John are married, Sally has $40,000 in debt, and John has $0 in debt. But as soon as Sally and John are married, the two become one. And so that debt becomes not just Sally's, even though it was Sally who racked up all of the debt. John racked up none of the debt, right? But as they come together as one, it becomes John's debt as well. It is their debt together, right? So now instead of Sally having $40,000 of debt and John having $0 of debt, Sally and John have $40,000 of debt. And so if John comes into this marriage and he puts down $40,000 and pays off the debt, that's totally just. Because they're one, right? Because two have become one. And so now it's John's debt as well. It's their debt. You see how this works? Our sin debt is transferred to Jesus in the same way. Right? Jesus doesn't just come in as a rich guy, puts down some money to pay off our debt. No. Jesus comes in and we become one with him. We come into union with him. He He lives in us. And then after we become one with him, he pays our debt. Even though it's me that came in and racked up all of the debt leading up to it. Right? He comes in and he pays it on the cross. And when he did that, he set us free. He set me free from my debt. And so we become justified before God because the debt is paid. Because of our union with Jesus. Okay, but what then you might ask, or what you might be wondering, is, doesn't that just inherently give us reason to sin? I mean, right, what you might be wondering, well, hey, I mean, if I'm paid for, then what the heck, why not just keep sinning? If no matter how much sin debt we bring in, or even incur after, it's all paid for on the cross, then heck, I mean, why does it even matter if we sin? Right? Shouldn't I just keep using that credit card? Paul puts it this way in verse 17. Doesn't that make Christ a servant of sin? No, it doesn't. Because the backwards nature of the gospel is that once we are in union with Christ, we end up following the law far better than we ever could have before. Why? It's because the union is based on love. Look at verse 20. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Okay, think back to Sally and John. When John pays Sally's debt, right, immediately after John pays Sally's debt, puts down $40,000, would you expect Sally to go out shopping and just spend more than they have and incur a whole bunch more debt? Well, John paid it. I may as well go get more, right? No, you wouldn't expect that. Why? Because she loves John and she's grateful for John's sacrifice. And the two are now one. And so, in the same way, our reason to incur our sin debt and our reason to not sin changes when we come into union with Christ. Right? It goes from, instead of, right, we're trying not to sin for the sake of our own self-salvation. We now fight sin out of a thankfulness for Jesus' love on the cross, with the power of the Holy Spirit behind us. And that motive is far stronger and longer lasting than simply trying to save ourselves. And so ironically, when we are set free from the bondage of the law, we actually follow the law better. And it's because our motive has changed. Have you ever tried to do something without messing up? Have you ever explicitly said, okay, I'm going to type my next 100 words, and I'm not going to mess up once? What happens? It gets 10 times harder to do, right? So in college, I played on this intramural softball team, and I'm not that great a softball player. I didn't grow up playing a lot of baseball, but I got on this team that was just really good, perennial winners, like championship winners, and because I knew some people from church that were athletes in action, and they basically drafted a team of the Division I baseball and softball players. So I got on this team because I had some friends on the team, and I'm not a great softball player, but I can throw the ball from A to B, and I can connect decently, usually with a slow pitch softball, and I'm not going to make a lot of fielding errors. But I came in and I knew coming in these guys were really good. Right? They always win, and they're just all really talented athletes. And so I came in, and my whole goal coming in was I'm just not going to screw up. Okay, I'm just not going to screw up. That's the one thing I'm going to do. I'm not going to come in and hit home runs. I'm going to come in and I'm going to get on base. I don't care if I walk or hit a single. I'm not striking out at the plate. Okay, I'm going to connect with that ball and get on base. And then in the field, I'm not going to win any Golden Gloves. Right? But I'm just not going to make errors that cost us the game. Right? That is my goal coming in. That's my mindset coming in. And so I just completely focused. I'm just not going to screw up. Well, of course, then what happened? I played way worse than I'm capable of. And so I was playing second base, and it was one of the first games, and first few batters up, and the first guy knocks one right to me at second. So I feel the ball, okay, I pick it up, and I turn to throw to first base. The guy's kind of booking it down the line, so I gotta make a pretty quick throw. So I throw it to first, and I throw it wide, so that it pulls the first baseman off the bag. He catches it, but he has to take his foot off the bag to catch it, and so the guy gets to first safely, right? And so now I'm like, oh, God. All right, it's just, I'm gonna throw that one out. It's gonna be better from here on out. I'm not making any more errors. That's it for the season. Here we go, right? Well, the next batter up hits one to me. I mean, go figure. The two batters hit opposite field to second base. Like, who? That doesn't happen, right? Right? I mean, they put me in second base because that doesn't happen, right? So the next batter hits it right to me. I feel it okay, and I turn, I launch it at first base, and it goes right over the first baseman's head. Sailed just right over the first baseman. And it wasn't like a 5-foot first baseman, right? This guy was like 6'4", 6'5". You know, and I was throwing from second base. Like, it's not actually easy to throw over a guy's head from second. A 6'5" guy's head from second base to first base, right? And I was mortified. I was just, and so after that, they moved me to right field. And things got better. But what was my problem? My problem was not that I can't throw a ball from second base to first base. I can throw a ball from second base. If we go play catch after the service, man, I'll throw farther than that, and I'll hit you in the glove every time. Right? The problem was that I was focused on not screwing up that throw. The problem is that I was, instead of being focused, if I'd just been focused on getting that guy out at first, right, field the ball, I'm just going to get that guy out. If I'd been focused on that, I would have made that throw twice. I would have had 2 outs easy. But instead, I was focused on not screwing up that throw. And so inevitably, I made 2 errors and moved to right field. But this is what happens when we come into union with Jesus. Our mindset changes by the power of the Holy Spirit. So instead of focusing on not trying to screw up and do good, right? Through the Holy Spirit, we focus on Jesus and his death on the cross, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves living far more moral lives than we were before or ever could have before. Right? Because it has come out of Jesus' sacrifice with us, which we understand because of our union with him. And so if you want to break free from the despair and the self-righteousness of the law, you need to realize that Jesus saved you from the law, died to save you from the law, and understand that you are in union with Jesus. And out of that, we have become one with him, and he has paid our debts, and we are made righteous. And so we don't have to focus on not screwing up for our own salvation. We are righteous. And so our motive changes into thankfulness.